Good evening, everyone. And we have handled the technology issues that we had earlier this evening. And we are live with Tony Saper. Right.
Oh,
Tony, thank you for joining us and thank you for using technology.
well, I try.
So I'm just going to do a brief introduction and then we will get right into it. Everyone who is watching, thank you so much for hanging with us tonight. And yes, I will be visiting someplace to buy a computer tomorrow. So um, technology is wonderful. Tony has lived in North Kansas City for 26 years at 2113. I almost said my old address, 2113 Erie Street with Deborah Bumgardner, who sadly now lives in a memory care facility due to dementia. Sorry about that. He now lives with his miniature schnauzer, Chloe, who takes him for his walks throughout the neighborhood. He has two sons, Carrie and Alex, and two daughters-in-law, Nancy and Tiara, and their sons, Carrie Jr. and Jasper, and they all live here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Tony is no stranger to community service in North Kansas City. He's been on the Parks and Recreation Board. He's been on the North Kansas City Hospital Board of Trustees. He's had service awards and recognition from North Kansas City. He was a PhD candidate with Rutgers University, specifically in planning and urban development, degrees from Wash U in philosophy, University of Missouri, Columbia Philosophy, and the University of Missouri, Kansas City with psychology and philosophy as well. His work history is fascinating, and if you get a chance to see his whole dossier, but some of his accomplishments is with the Samuel Rogers Community Health Center here in Kansas City, the Carondelet Health Systems, founding member and director Midcoast Radio, KKFI. That's exciting for me because of being a musician and an artist. I love KKFI. Northland Transportation Committee, Mid-America Regional Council Transit Committee. The list goes on. Anthony, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm so pleased to have you on the broadcast.
I'm glad to be here.
Hi, he is back and it sounds solid. Okay. And 3, 2, here you are, and you are back.
I have no idea what happened or where.
Okay.
Good. I had no idea where I was when we went off.
Okay. So, Tony, one of the things that we might try on the little box below on your, you should have a little gear. We might try just connecting you with just audio to see if we get a better connection.
I don't know. Somehow it was disconnected. I don't know why. The connection here was good.
Okay. Well, let's try it again. Let's go ahead and have you start your opening statement again. And I'm not going to hide myself this time.
Okay. I see you, and we'll keep doing that. Basically, I'm running because North Kansas City is a rich city. That doesn't mean the people who live here are. We're white collar, blue collar, sometimes no collar. But the city itself is rich. Now, outside developers, corporate interests, they all know this. And they've come up with all kinds of proposals and plans, and sometimes solicited, sometimes not, in order to benefit themselves. That's what businesses do, and that's fine. But I think what we need to do is focus on the people who live here. And when it comes to making a decision, how do you balance business interests and resident interests? Well, I don't. I don't try to balance them. I say what we should do is look at citizen, resident interests first, and then as businesses can fit into those, make the mesh between them. But primarily the focus should be on what benefits the residents of North Kansas City. And if businesses and projects benefit us, fine. They have to overwhelmingly benefit us. And if they don't, we pass or we ignore them. The focus is on the people who actually live in North Kansas City. And in some ways, I see my campaign as a referendum on which direction we should go. Whose side are you on? The corporations and outside developers, or the people who actually live here? And many of the projects that have been proposed, I call picture postcard projects. They look good on paper, but do they really benefit the people who live here day in and day out? Maybe, maybe not. But the focus has to be on the people who live here.
Thank you, Tony. I love that passion for North Kansas City that you have. How will you work to promote diversity within our community?
Diversity always also ties into the affordable housing issue. And North Kansas City on the diversity issue. And diversity means what? Difference in skin color, language? Yeah, but it means a lot more too. It means economic diversity, it means diversity between people who are usually able and those who have challenges in functioning in life. All of these different kinds of things. So it's language, culture, ethnicity, native origins, color, skin tone, and economic interest. All of those are the elements of diversity. And when you come to affordable housing, you have another problem, as others have discussed before. What's affordable housing? Well, if you're working a minimum wage, 40 hours a week, or sometimes less, no housing in North Kansas City is affordable. If you're a North Kansas City CEO making $1 million a year, and we have some, it's all affordable. So what does affordable mean in that regard? And we have to say which groups we're actually targeting. And we really haven't said that. We've had some sub rosa kinds of intimations of what that means. And we've done that before. Let me just read a short portion of an article I wrote in 2000. It was called Ethnic Cleansing in North Kansas City. The city's longtime self-image and substantial reality has been that, at the year 2020, year 2000, is that of a working class, whites-only community. Over the last decade, the white population has gradually been replaced with many different people, many of them living in Northgate Village apartments. The Northgate Village population has become perhaps the most racially and ethnically diverse in the entire metropolitan area. It was home to African Americans, Hispanics from throughout the Americas, Pacific Islanders, those from the Asian subcontinent, and other Asians, new immigrants from Central Europe, as well as white European Americans. It was a population of elderly living door to door with young singles, families with children, and folks with various disabilities. Now, we eliminated that and we built brand new garden apartments, townhomes, and single family homes. And it really looks good and it's been a boon to the community, but we have to realize what that cost us. And the cost has never really been discussed. There was a legal suit against the city over that, and it was private. It's never been revealed, and we still don't know the actual elements of that settlement. So diversity has to include a lot more than just people who have kids or people who have different skin tones. It has to include different religions, different ethnicities, the whole. And as far as affordable housing goes, there's very little we can do as a city with affordable housing that we've already missed the ball. We've poured into the whole Northgate Village redevelopment area. The city poured over $30 million into that. Did it require a real affordable housing for people who are making minimum wage? No. What do we target as the affordable housing? Do we actually make a target? We haven't. We've sort of quietly assumed that we didn't want certain people here. And to a large extent, we succeeded. That's not right.
So I'll ask the fifth question, but because you've already been touching on it, what is your official position on affordable housing in North Kansas City, including single family dwellings and apartments?
3/4 of the people who live in North Kansas City rent. They rent single family homes, they rent apartments. The only way the city can have an impact on affordable housing is as it puts tens of millions of dollars into various projects, require that they actually have a wide range of housing prices, not just a little below market average, but way below. We're going to have the diversity that I think we really should have. And the city hasn't struck those deals with those developers. They, in many ways, caved into them. Again, because we wanted to embrace the picture postcard syndrome, how the city looks, but not how it actually feels to actually live here and function here.
So how will you balance the needs and wants of the residents and the business community? Because that scale is sometimes a challenge, because you have ones that vote for you, and then you have the ones who provide the resources for the city to provide the needs for the residents.
Well, right now, we have so much money coming in, we have had, that's not been an issue in terms of providing for the basic city services of police, fire, sanitation, water, etc. And I have nothing against the businesses, but I think first you have to put what benefits the people who live here. And if it benefits people who come here for entertainment, for food, for other activities, that's fine. I have no problem with it. I encourage that. But it has to benefit the people who live here, whatever development we have. If it doesn't overwhelmingly benefit the people who are resident here, who live here day in and day out, then I don't support it. But a lot of activities and businesses can fit into that. We have to be selective, and we have to be demanding of those businesses.
How can the city, go ahead.
And they're here to make money and make a profit. That's how they function. That's how it works. And so they're willing to come here, but we have to be willing to actually make those demands and put up standards, if you will.
Okay. How can the city better communicate with residents, business owners, and the consumers that come here?
Well, we do it in a very formalistic way now. Now, we're a small community, 4,500 people or so, give or take. The new census will tell us really what that is. We're small enough that we can actually have town hall meetings. For instance, if Armour Road comes up, one of the biggest problems I had with Armour Road redevelopment, aside from technical issues, which I'm willing to go into, is the fact that the mass meeting to discuss it and deal with it occurred after the fact. Those meetings should have been ongoing before the fact, not just on Armour Road, not just on, but a whole variety of development issues. We're small enough, we can do that. It's one of the glorious things about living in North Kansas City. We can do that.
What is your position on the streetcar expansion to North Kansas City?
One of the problems is you've got about 1.5 miles or 2 miles of dead zone from about 3rd Street up to maybe 12th, and the bridge across the Missouri River. That's a huge expense. for any kind of public transit to have a dead zone like that. And until there's actually a plan, feasible plan, to take a streetcar into Kansas City North, coming through North Kansas City, it's a no starter. Actually, North Kansas City, we did pass a tax on ourselves for a streetcar, but that was contingent on Kansas City passing their own taxes to go north. It never happened. And until that happens,
Well,
there's no chance for having a streetcar. The cost of building a bridge across the river or retrofitting something else, coming up maybe 10th or 12th, before you actually get into North Kansas City proper, is insurmountable at this point.
so tell me what you mean by dead zone.
I ride the streetcar. I might like it, but it's not happening here. Go ahead.
So tell me what you mean by dead zone.
You're crossing there are no people or businesses along about a 2-mile stretch from downtown Kansas, from about 3rd Street till you get to about 12th.
Okay.
There's nothing there. You're crossing a river, you're crossing railroad tracks, you're crossing other minor industrial areas there. There's no benefit to the people who live here. There's no way, there's nothing there.
Okay.
You need places where people can get off, get on, shop, walk, whatever they want to do. But for 2 miles, you're paying a huge amount of money for a 2-mile dead zone before you get anything.
So it becomes a pass through.
Huh?
So it becomes a pass through.
Yeah.
So I'm going to anticipate a question
And
from
it's a huge part of the total cost too.
Right.
And why no federal agency would approve it at this point.
So I'm going to preempt Dave Wood with his question. How can the city improve relationships with communities in the surrounding area around North Kansas City?
Well, number one, we don't rely on staff to staff communications. Staffs in North Kansas City and other cities are implementers. They aren't decision makers. They can't make decisions. Only the elected officials can make those decisions. And unless we develop relationships with them, as others have said, we won't have that. For instance, in terms of the whole issue of COVID, the city staff was never really in contact with anybody, let alone the city leaders on a very minimal level. And sometimes those when I say minimal level, it means some kind of group meeting in which everybody smiles and says nothing and then walks away. No decisions have been made. No real connections have been made. And I think it has to be direct, person to person. North Kansas City elected officials to Kansas City elected officials, to Gladstone, to Riverside, and so forth.
How will you approach a divisive issue where these different groups want different outcomes? So we've had a couple, and it can.
We'll have more.
That's true.
We will have many more. The thing to do in any kind of negotiation, that's what it is, between groups, is to find, number one, what their commonalities are, because there are things that are common to them.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the very controversial still Armour Road project, one of the commonalities is that people wanted to actually make it more than just a pass-through freeway between Burlington and I-29/35. That was common to all. So building on that one factor alone can then bring the other interests. Everybody has their own interests. And they have many, actually they have many interests, and you have to find out what are their interests, how they rank their interests, and how you can join them together. And that's the only way to do it.
What would you like to do with Armour Road going forward?
I would hate to spend another hundreds of thousands of dollars in ripping it out. And there'd be no point in that. There are minor modifications you can make here or there. Some of it was poorly planned. As a former planner, I can tell you that. And for instance, at Fayette and Armour, they eliminated a right turn lane. And what that does is traffic that is turning on Fayette now has to wait in line for the traffic lights to clear for those going west. Before, they could just turn and open up the road. Now, when they have to wait, it means the traffic behind them also waits as they make that turn. And actually, there's room there to make a 2 or 3 car lane right now. All you'd have to do is repaint a few lines. There are little things like that can be done.
So what you're saying is if the goal is to reduce congestion, there were some things that were good about the previous version of Armour Road that relieves congestion, but there's still room to have some of the amenities on Armour Road that people are wanting.
And part of it was based on the fact that they wanted to have an extension of the business district east of Fayette, basically. But what you run into, there's a community center, there's parkland. There is no place for businesses there. So there is no natural fluid extension possible. It was done artificially. I think about the times that Kansas City tried to build various districts, art districts, things like that. Well, the whole 18th Street district was not built by the city. It was done by individual entrepreneurs who came into an area that was available and little used, a bit run down, and they developed it organically on their own. It wasn't done by the fiat of city planners. And sometimes we get hoodwinked, I think, into thinking what city planners can do for us. Or sometimes it's what they do to us, not for us.
So as we wait to see if there's any remaining questions for you this evening,
Sure.
Having worked in planning and development of urban areas professionally, what is your take on North Kansas City and its position within the metropolitan area?
It's in a unique, not only in the metropolitan area, it's a very unique position in the country. Its location is, there are some maps that have been developed over the years that put North Kansas City as part of the Kansas City metropolitan core, and it is. And we have the benefit of having a very tightly limited and constructed residential area, which makes us for a very family-friendly, person-friendly neighborhood. But we're surrounded on all sides by industrial areas, which is fine. That provides some of the huge resources that North Kansas City now has to benefit the people who live here.
I love this question that just came in. It's been asked several times, but it's not your typical question you would get in a forum like this. So I hope you like it. What is your number one favorite dish from a restaurant in North Kansas City?
I have to split that. Spices, red curry, and Christine's tenderloin.
The tenderloin?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. and like I said to Lisa earlier this evening, I don't know how Jesse keeps asking about one dish at one restaurant when we could have one dish at every restaurant in town.
You can't do that one day. Yeah, there's too many.
Yeah. Prime rib at Paul and Jack's.
And yeah, well, there you go. And why is that? Because we have the benefit of about 4,500 people living here, but anywhere upwards of 25,000 people who work here and transit here and provide that enormous base for all of these businesses, which unfortunately for the last couple of months has disappeared. But it will come back.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate that the businesses that are coming to North Kansas City are innovative. They're they're really thought-provoking about what an urban living situation could be. And I'm glad we moved back. We talked a little bit about the fact that we didn't really know each other before, but we actually encountered each other back in the early 90s, you and I.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Again, North Kansas City is also an incubator city, and it has been for a long time. And those incubators then grow into sometimes very vast enterprises. We don't, Cerner is only Cerner located here because it got certain public benefits. In relatively minor compared to those that came along later to other entities. But it was an incubator city, a place to start and grow.
And we're fortunate enough that we've had several that have stayed, and certainly, the entrepreneurial spirit here is alive and well and wonderful, not just in the entertainment businesses. So, I'm going to give opportunity for one.
I spent a lot of my 26 years walking dogs throughout North Kansas City, into the industrial zones and everywhere. And I was always amazed at the vast variety of enterprises we have here. It's astounding.
It is. We have one more question. What can we do to get a good farmers market back in North Kansas City?
Well, I was never all that impressed with the one we had. Part of the problem is that we're too close to the city market in Kansas City, which is just a few minutes away. And so what we get are it'd be spillovers. Can we have our own farmers market on a limited way? Yes, but it's very limited. And unless you want something particular that maybe an Amish family brings in some of the delightful foods, it's not going to happen.
Well, I will be sad if it doesn't happen, because my hardest part was it was on a Friday morning.
Yeah. In other words, they have to be able to have enough of a market of buyers, and that market is drained off.
Supply and demand
across the river.
Yes. So we are going to go ahead and give you the opportunity to give your closing statements directly to the constituents and ask for their vote.
Again, I do see my campaign is something of a referendum on which way we go with North Kansas City. North Kansas City is changing, no doubt about that, but there are winners and losers in that change. We have to decide if we're going to focus on the winners being the residents who live in North Kansas City or the businesses that flourish here. And I think we have to my focus is on the residents of North Kansas City and having the businesses mesh into their needs and their wants and what benefits them. And I think for too long, we've been focusing on development, meaning how do we help businesses, as opposed to the residents who live here. And I think we need to change that balance to benefiting the citizens, the residents, the people who live here day to day in North Kansas City. And I would hope residents of Ward 1 would vote for me. And if they have any questions, I would be more than happy to have them go to my website, saper-ward1.com. saper-ward1.com. Because one of the things I believe in that city leaders should do is be open and transparent. And I put many of my positions and thoughts on that website, and you're free to look at them. I'm a person of many opinions and preferences, but one thing I've learned over many, many years and many, many jobs and crafts and activities is that we only can base at least I base my positions on the information I have and what is known at that time. That can always change. I'm always open to actually reflecting on what positions I've taken when new information comes in. And I think we all need to do that because too often we get set in our ways and our thinking. We get ossified in a way. And we aren't open to new ideas and new thinking and recognize changes when they happen. And I would appreciate your vote if you live in Ward 1. If you live in the other wards, I would still appreciate your vote, but you can't do it. Because we don't live in Chicago where the slogan has always been vote early and vote often.
Tony, thank you very much for joining me this evening and your flexibility. I know we're running a little bit later than we had anticipated. Thank you all for tuning in, even though we ran.
The technology worked.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm glad the technology worked.
Yes, the technology did work and the message got out there, and we did give our constituents the opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to ask that you vote on June 2nd and vote once, because that's what we do here in North Kansas City. And with that, I'm going to sign off for the night. Tony, thank you. Thank you to everyone who joined in the forum. And watch for the videos to go back up on replay so that you can share them. And of course, feel free to reach out to the candidate in your ward if you have any questions that came up after you watch this live stream. Good night, everyone. What?
When do they go on replay?
I'll put the replay up tomorrow.
Good. I hope people will take a look at not just the candidates in their wards, but in all the wards, because this has to be a community-wide effort, whatever we do.
Amen. At the end of the day, whoever wins, we are all still neighbors.
That's right.
Good night, everyone.